All right, Pat. Today we're going to be starting up our new segment here at the Body Lock, the Oddsmaker Ignorance of the Week, which was inspired by all of the very silly odds, more so on the women's side of things in MMA, which we will be getting into. I'll be taking over that side. Well, you give us the men, and then at the end, we'll pick our worst, what we think is the worst or most ridiculous odds of the week, and perhaps the one that we would lay some money down on in theory. And so before we get into things, you guys, these are just Pat and I's thoughts on what we fights that we would bet on. Maybe we're not suggesting anything, of course, but the ones that this is how we feel about them. So we're all talking about our money specifically for this, just for a disclaimer. So let's get into things. We got UFC Vegas 31, right? It's 31 this week, Pat, and then Bellator 262, which are the two events that I think we're both looking at most specifically. So, Pat, give me your thoughts on the fights that you've selected for maybe the ones that stood out the most on the men's side.
Yeah, so I got three for you here. We'll start with Bellator, and then we'll move on to UFC Vegas. For Bellator, now I know I might get some flack for this one, but I'm looking at Matt Mitrione versus Tyrell Fortune. So right now, closing odds, depending on where you're going, range from plus 265 Mitrione to plus 300, and negative 350 for 340 for Tyrell, all the way up to negative 375. Here's why I don't think those odds make sense. Yes, Mitrione is long in the tooth. He's older. But his last losses have come to legitimate competition, right? Timothy Johnson, Sergey Kartanov. Guys that, you just don't steamroll through generally in the Bellator heavyweight division. And Tyrell, right, has a good record, of course, lost to Timothy Johnson. But his last win was over Jack May. And a lot of people are saying, after that win, he's just going to roll through Mitrione. But if you look at Jack May's record, right, which I think is important, the man is 11-8. He's not exactly, just knocking him down. In fact, in his last 7, he's lost 6, and his only win comes over Michael Quintero at LXF1. That's it. And I haven't heard of the guy. I don't know anyone else that has. He's also lost to Michael Quintero, actually, right before that in the first round. So I don't want to stake too much on that performance alone. I'm not saying Tyrell doesn't have the tools to beat Mitrione, because he does, but the odds here just seem a little out of whack. So for that reason, I'm picking that as my Bellator fight. For the other two fights that I have Alan Bordeaux, or Bodo. Yeah, no, I'm butchering them. It's going to happen.
Is what it is, guys.
It is what it is. I promise I'll work on it. I just, you know me. And then Rodrigo Nascimento. That was too bad. And so with this fight, these are two really untested guys. They both are coming off losses. And when I look at Nascimento, he's beaten Don'Tale Mayes and Mikel Martinic on the Contender Series, both by, submission. But he lost in the first round, 45 seconds to Chris Daukaus. Meanwhile, Alan Bordeaux has only lost twice to Dalcha Lungiambula.
I think that was a lot better, actually.
Okay, there you go. And that was before he got to the UFC. Yes. And then Tom Aspinall, who we know is on the rise in the heavyweight division and is just kind of running through people. So looking at this, it's hard for me to understand that the odds are listed as, let me just verify real quick here because they are actually updating as we're talking. Yeah, negative 350 for Rodrigo and a plus 280 for Allen. I mean, would I lean Rodrigo here? Sure, but there's value on Allen. I definitely think Allen could end up with the victory. I do not see it as a clear-cut, yes, he's a heavy favorite. Rodrigo's just going to roll right through him. And that's what a negative 350 is telling me, that he should be a solid favorite, that he's got more of the overarm tools. I haven't seen enough. These guys are too new to have that much disparity in the odds for me. Lastly, I have probably my most solid pick in terms of where, the men's odds are a little off. And they're not terrible now. They were worse at open. But Billy Q Billy Quarantillo versus Gabriel Benitez. Remember that Gabriel Benitez ended up taking this fight after Quarantillo's original opponent dropped out. And we're looking at plus 165 at some sites for Billy Q and negative 210 for Benitez. I think Quarantillo has more than enough tools in his pocket to neutralize and get the win here. I'm not sure why he's an underdog. I mean, his last outing wasn't his best, obviously, but I don't see Benitez as nearly as much of a threat to Quarantillo. And I really think that as long as, Quarantillo doesn't have some injury issue or something else going on, he's going to walk away with the win here. So he also was on a massive run up until he lost to Gavin Tucker, and Gavin Tucker is no slouch. So those are my 3 picks for fights that personally I think the odds are a little bit off on.
All right, there we have it. And we'll get to which one you think is the worst at the end, which you pretty much alluded to right there, which is fine. Yeah, spoiler alert, everybody. But all right, let's go to the other side of the action this weekend with the ladies, because we got 5 fights, and all 5 of them actually have pretty compelling odds. And we'll start off with perhaps not the most compelling, but it's definitely up there, especially in terms of the distance between 2 fighters. I think you know where I'm going, Pat. Pantera, she's back. Diana Avsaragova taking on Gabriela Golfin. This fight should absolutely be Diana Avsaragova's win. It should be a second win for her in Bellator. She's simply just the better fighter. Golfin coming in off of 2 losses. No shame in those losses too. Jasmine Jasdavicius and Erin Blanchfield, 2 very solid prospects. Obviously Blanchfield in the UFC now. But the thing is, this is exactly reminiscent of the Maria Agapova situation with Shanna Dobson, where there's still prospects. We should not be seeing odds this large at this stage, and these are the odds for this fight, where Avsaragova mostly at a minus 900 right now to plus 600 for Gabriela Golfin. But there are even some sites, Pat, that have her as high as minus 1400.
Jesus.
And yeah,
what?
So we have a couple minus over thousands here. We got 1250, 1111, 1000. Yeah, so there might actually be more over 1,000 now than there were 900. It's only gotten bigger since. So take that for what you will. Avsaragova just made weight this morning at the time of recording. Should still get the win, but I just don't know how people come to these conclusions with such small sample sizes. Like, again, Avsaragova definitely should win, but going this big is silly to me at this stage. So I personally, even though I don't think Golfin is going to win this fight, I would drop some off on her if I was going to do that, but I'm not. So, but hey, we're here to talk about it. So that's that one going down at flyweight. Then we move on over to what's happening in the UFC with the return and the end of her career with Marion Reneau versus Miesha Tate, which this one is a fight I just wouldn't touch. I wouldn't touch it at all because of all the unknowns, specifically around Miesha Tate. Right now, Miesha's sitting at the favorite, very close, minus 132, plus 105 for Reneau. Personally, I would favor Reneau, maybe flip these exactly how they are right now, but it just feels so hard for me to favor Miesha when we have no idea what we're going to see. I mean, we have an idea, right? But 5 years away, she seems to be in a phenomenal place. So everything is trending upward, I think, for her to come in there and do her thing. But it's just so hard to know with how long she's been away, all the changes that she's made, all that kind of thing. So I feel like in that case, still should be underdog a little bit. But if she comes in, as we know she can, if you look at her while she was champion, before those last 2 losses, if she comes in anything similar to that, she should be able to win this fight. But we just don't know. So I would flip those personally. Not the worst of this bunch, but still interesting to point out, and maybe worth a little something to put down on Reneau as well. So there's that one. And then I want to go back to Bellator with the featherweights. Another close set of odds here in Blanco versus Diana Silva, which this one shocked me as well. Blanco right now sitting at the minus 155 favorite to the plus 125 underdog. That is Silva. If you remember, Silva made her Bellator debut against Julia Budd last time out in a fight that she should have won, which is just ridiculous. Should have won. Ridiculous to say. Way closer than it should have been on paper. But I think for the reason and the fact that it was that close, the odds makers are like, oh, well, she has a shot against Blanco then. But I mean, styles make fights, you guys. And that was just a very weird performance from Julia Budd, who did not throw very much on the feet. Let Silva land the same overhand and leg kick kind of combo throughout the whole fight. And then Julia took her down quite easily in the second round, but didn't attempt it any other time in the fight. So if she would have, she definitely would have won a lot more convincingly, I think. But against Blanco, who is a fantastic striker, not gonna, give Silva the same type of hesitancy that Julia Budd will. I think this matches up very well for her, and I don't see her having any trouble with Silva. She's a finisher. We've seen that multiple times, and very tough. She got finished by Cyborg, but that's Cyborg. And then she's only lost to Budd and Cyborg in the last so many years. Like, this is a fight that she should definitely be able to win, especially when you look at what we've seen from both of them recently. So I think the odds should be wider on this one, actually. But what we're getting here, just maybe don't touch it at all. But just interesting to see how this one came out. So, then we move on to still Bellator, the main event, the most exciting fight of the weekend for me, Pat. I am so all on this flyweight title fight. Juliana Velasquez, Denise Kielholtz. Very interesting to see how big of a favorite that we are getting the champ. Minus 340 on a couple here. I know the Bellator, they showed the minus 400 during the weigh-ins, so she's as high as minus 400, minus 420 on some, but kind of right around that range, which, I mean, it's fair. I think that if you look at level of competition, slight edge to her. Of course, she just beat Alima, first and only person to do that. Good wins before that as well. She's undefeated. She's bigger than Kielholtz, but stylistically, you look at this one again, both judo black belts, phenomenal, and very great strikers. Kielholtz, the former, I guess still Bellator kickboxing champion. It's kind of, the kickboxing league is kind of not around anymore. It's been actually like 3 years, so I think it's safe to say it's not around at the moment. Yeah. But she never lost, Pat, so she is still the kickboxing champion. So stylistically, I think this fight should be an absolute banger. Kielholtz has finished. I think she finished all 4 of those wins on her current winning streak. Yeah. Ground and pound in the first one, 2 submissions after that, Americana rear naked choke, and then finished Kay Jackson with strikes in the last one too, who's very durable in her own right, is Kay Jackson. So I think that Juliana Velasquez will retain, but to see the odds this wide in a fight that I think should be awesome everywhere it goes, should be pretty competitive. Kielholtz definitely one I'd be dropping with my imaginary money, Pat. So, I mean, plus 260 in this kind of fight where it seems like she can finish everybody anywhere now. When she started at MMA, it was a little bit of a little rocky start, but she's really found the footing with this last 4, and we'll see how it goes at flyweight. But the one that we talked about the other day when we were recording, Pat, the last but not least here is over on the UFC side again. Amanda Lemos versus Montserrat Conejo Ruiz, the head and arm queen, the fantastic wrestler out of Mexico.
Ruiz,
my girl, mad. So she is taking on Amanda Lemos. At the moment, we have minus 500 to the plus 370 underdog that is Ruiz, as high as minus 600 for one spot, but everything is. Did I say 600 or 500 just now? Having a little brain lapse, but minus 600 is the highest that she has for one area, but everything is at 500 or higher there. So Conejo getting plus 400 from some. Either way, very shocking, and this fight was shocking to me to be made in the first place because it is top 15 for Ruiz right after her debut against Cheyenne Buys on short notice, mind you, Pat. So. Right. I'm very stunned that they made this fight in the first place. A little bit of a fast-tracking attempt, and maybe not so much love for Lemos, who is on a 3-fight winning streak, should be fighting upward after this, and especially finishing Livia Hinata Souza the way she did. Again, a situation where I really like Conejo, and when that last fight, she was the underdog again by a pretty big margin, and you and I both were kind of like, this is ridiculous because we've seen Ruiz, and that was a fight that we knew she was better than Baze, and she proved it. Even if it was by one move, it still
Yeah.
still worked out. So
Doesn't matter, man.
yeah,
Doesn't
get the
matter.
job done. So this is a fight again where, of course, I believe that she can pull it off, but it is a very tough matchup when you look at Lemos and what she's been able to do in the UFC in this recent run. Like I said, that Souza win, I think, is all that you can really look at. She looked incredible in that fight, like definitely a future contender. Before that, though, to put it on Mizuki Inoue, dropped her, and not an easy person to beat and look as good as she did against in that fight. Before that, submitted Miranda Granger with, what was it, a bulldog kind of choke, if you remember back to that one. Don't see that all the time. And then you look at her only loss in her whole career, Pat, was at bantamweight on short notice against Leslie Smith, which this is a strawweight fight, you guys. These are strawweights now.
Yeah.
And she got pretty bullied in that one and beat up by Leslie, but that's going to happen when you're facing somebody who's currently a featherweight in Bellator. So yeah, Amanda Lemos looking very solid. She's going to have a pretty solid size advantage as well because Conejo is tiny, 5 foot even. Very good wrestler again, and she can have some moments in that area, I think. But against Lemos, you're gambling pretty much everywhere. She's dangerous on the ground, can hurt you badly, as we've seen on the feet. So it's like, why not drop a little something here on Ruiz? But again, interesting matchup. These odds don't quite agree with, would shrink them down a little bit, but still interestingly wide. So lots of interesting numbers on the lady side this week. So yeah, I think that's where we can wrap it on that. But Pat, for our top picks of the worst, and how about this? We can just go overall. We'll do men's and women's, but the one that is the number one, combining them both. So I'll give it back to you, sir.
All right. Well, I think, thinking about it a little bit, I know Billy Q is kind of what I would say the easiest one for me to lock if I was going to put money on this. Okay, I really think he's got a good shot here, and that's good value. But I got to admit, I am tempted. The more I think about it, I am tempted by that Matt Mitrione, Tyrell Fortune. It's very possible Tyrell Fortune goes up there. But the experience and just that he's plus 320 in some books. I mean, that's a lot of bang for your buck if you wanted. So I got to go Quarantillo in terms of what I would feel more comfortable putting money on. But if I had a flyer, and this is just throwing that out there, if I was going to put on like a $5 flyer, I think Mitrione by KO is not a terrible thing to do, because that's probably a good plus 400 ish, which that's nice money. So that's my pick in terms of the men's overall, I guess. So who do you got for the women's overall?
Yeah, overall, man, like just going through it all right now, I think it's tough. For me, it's between Keyholtz and Golfin, specifically because the odds are so crazy. Like that one's like definition of a fucking bet. In that case, this situation, you never know. But in terms of feeling more comfortable about actually ending up with some money, I think I'd have to take Keyholtz, just because I really thought the odds would be a lot closer in that one. And here we are. They're still at a very good rate for the underdog, who is looking fantastic right now. Plenty of momentum going into this title fight. Exactly what she would want. And yes, Velasquez very tough. And like I said, I do believe she'll win. But at those numbers, you got to drop something on Keyholtz, in my opinion. So I would go with her. And then as for the men's side, I do agree with you on Mitrione, just pretty much because of that experience. And, Fortune, everyone's always kind of talked about both the Fortune brothers a little bit, right, in Bellator, but they haven't impressed me too much. And again, as you mentioned, Mitrione's resume alone, and he just seems really pissed off this week, So I think that's for reasons, which I'm sure many of you will have seen. If not, media stuff, what are you going to do? But
Right.
I like Mitrione on the men's side. And overall, I think, I guess I have to by default then take Keyholtz still as the number one I would go with in terms of worst. But your women's side and overall, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the women's side, I'd have to agree in terms of Keyholtz, because that to me is the closest one who is an underdog that I think could really pull that off. And at plus, 275 plus 310 right now, actually, on bet 365. Like, that value is crazy for how close this fight should be. I get why Velasquez is favored, but that much is crazy to me. So I would agree that that's my women's pick, and I would also say that's probably my overall pick, because Velasquez is very good, and I believe that if you force me to pick, I'm gonna lean to pick her to win this fight, just straight out. But the value is there for Keyholes. If that's one of those fights where I would feel pretty good about putting down a little bit of money just for the value play, because it's just such a wide gap compared to what it should be. So that's my overall pick as well.
Yep, totally fair. And regardless, you guys, looking forward to how all these matchups play out, not just on the number side, of course, because in the end, they don't matter, right? It comes down to fists and feet flying. So looking forward to it. But hope you guys enjoyed this first installment of the Oddsmaker Ignorance of the Week, whatever we're going to officially call it. I like that. We'll see where the boss man takes it. Either way, thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share your thoughts on our thoughts on the odds, which ones you think are the worst, have the best value, all that kind of thing. Let us know if we got them right, if we got them wrong, who we left out potentially. Yeah, drop it all in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that stuff. And we'll see you next time. Hopefully, there's money to be made out there.
Yeah. Yes, hopefully so. Or there's money to be lost. One of the two.
Yes, one of those.
One of those.